Why does the Chinese government fear you?
Some Chinese officials describe me as a demon. So naturally, some fear about the demon.
This week, is the issue of the Dalai Lama about foreign policy or economics? And who are the real benefactors of our more than 200 billion rand trade relationship with China? This is Checkpoint, and I'm eNCA Mabuse. Hot on the heels of the cancellation of the Nobel Laureate Summit in Cape Town, 50 South African companies will be showcasing their products in China this month to celebrate diplomatic ties between Beijing and Pretoria. This week, we find out more about our government's relationship with China. But first, let's take a look at why the popularity of the Dalai Lama is of such great concern to those ruling the land of the Red Dragon. Tibetan Buddhism, as practiced in Tibet, Nepal and India, is an important spiritual path for up to 20 million people worldwide. At its head is the Dalai Lama, who comes from a long line of gurus dating back to the 15th century. In 2004, the 14th Dalai Lama, on his third visit to South Africa, prayed and preached at this temple in Auckland Park, Johannesburg.
The teachings that His Holiness gives us, not only Buddhist teachings, but to lay people as well, are very important in the world today. He's a peaceful man, and he has lots of compassion and wisdom.
Former President Nelson Mandela welcomed the Dalai Lama in 1996 and again in 2004.
His Holiness
lauding his commitment to values that all human beings strive for. A decade later, those values appear to have been forgotten by South African leaders. He has consistently been unable to secure a visa in the last 5 years.
The fault is not on our side as government. He cancelled the trip.
The Dalai Lama had been scheduled to attend a Nobel Laureate Summit in Cape Town this month, but says he was bullied by South African authorities into withdrawing his visa application.
Absolutely not.
The summit was subsequently cancelled. Instead, two of the laureates travelled to Dharamsala, India, to demonstrate their solidarity with the Dalai Lama.
We would have loved to have been able to go to the new South Africa and celebrate the legacy of Nelson Mandela. Our message was a message of protest to China. It was a message of protest to governments who sell their soul and their own sovereignty to China, as South Africa did.
The SACP, which has kept close ties with the ruling Communist Party in China, says that the Dalai Lama should never return to South Africa.
As the SACP, we don't need the Dalai Lama here. Finish and clear. China is our largest trading partner. Who wants to offend one's trading partner?
What about standing for human rights in Tibet?
The issue of human rights in Tibet, it's something that must be dealt with within the Chinese political system.
China took over Tibet in 1950, and the Dalai Lama fled to India after the Tibetan uprising of 1959. There he headed a government in exile until 2011. He has retired from politics, but remains a powerful and influential figure in Tibet and its capital Lhasa, says China expert Dr. Garth Lapierre.
The voice of the Dalai Lama in exile is as potent, powerful, influential as if he was resident in Lhasa. So the whole agenda of the Chinese is to mute that voice as much as possible.
I would like to give Your Holiness the floor to speak to the members of the Parliament.
He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1989 and is recognized the world over as a humanitarian.
Thank you.
I always see a stress. I am nothing special person. Simply one of the 7 billion human beings.
Beijing sees Tibet as an integral part of China and regards the Dalai Lama as a splittist who wants to break up the country. The Dalai Lama says he only wants greater political and religious autonomy in Tibet.
The Chinese authority, they want to reform according to their own way.
Since 2008, there has been growing resistance to Chinese rule in Tibet. Over 100 students and monks have committed suicide by self-immolation, a public act of private desperation. Restrictions imposed by China mean that very few journalists are able to report from inside Tibet. And silencing the Dalai Lama is a critical tool for China to keep Tibet off the world's agenda. In February, the Chinese Foreign Ministry urged Barack Obama to cancel a meeting with the Dalai Lama or face the consequences. Washington defied Beijing's threats and the meeting went ahead. Garth Lepierre says South Africa needs China too much to take a stand.
It was China's patronage and China's advocacy on behalf of South Africa that got us accepted into the BRIC Club in 2010.
The government is fumbling on this issue.
Analyst Moeletsi Mbeki believes that the Zuma administration is motivated by pressure, not national interest.
It's exposed to world opinion, it's exposed to the opinion of the Nobel laureates, and then it's exposed to the Chinese pressure. So it doesn't know how to navigate those challenges.
International relations denies accusations that China applied pressure. Anyway, they have commended South Africa on this position that we have taken.
There was no need for anybody to commend us because we actually didn't make any decision.
Well, China clearly sees this as South Africa's position.
Granted, but that's factually incorrect.
We wanted to speak to China's ambassador to South Africa, but our interview request was denied. Guy Lieberman, who organized the Dalai Lama's meetings with Mandela, believes that there has been a progressive hardening of attitude towards the Dalai Lama since his last visit in 2004. How does the Dalai Lama himself see this issue?
It's an issue of confidence in his eyes. And he says it more as a kindness than a criticism, that South Africa and Africa just needs to find confidence in itself.
But the list of those who lack the confidence to meet the spiritual leader is growing. Heads of state who agree to appointments with the Dalai Lama often keep the press away. This picture with Barack Obama was taken by a White House photographer, and his appearance at the US Senate in March appeared tightly controlled and scripted. All of this to keep on the right side of China. When we return, empire builders or new pioneers, China's inroads into South Africa. China says its cheap products have enriched the South African consumer market and helped rein in inflation. But some on the Cape Flats tell a different story.
My name is Washila Gordon. I'm working in the clothing industry for over 20 years now.
At its height in the 1990s, more than 50,000 people in the Western Cape were employed in the clothing industry. It's said that almost every family on the Cape Flats could recall a relative working there at some stage.
I've started in the clothing industry from a very young age, when I was 18 years old. At that time, I had to go work because I had to provide for my family because I had a small baby at the time.
Nationally, more than 100,000 jobs were lost between 2002 and 2010 as cheap Chinese imports hemorrhaged local industries. Breadwinners like Washila were spat out several times.
I started off at a company called Park Avenue. I worked there for about 15 years. The company closed down 2005 because of the Chinese imports, because we were manufacturing 100% for Woolworths. And then our orders were stopped because Woolworths was now importing orders from China. And then subsequently our company closed down at the time.
7 years later, she was retrenched again at another Woolworths supplier, Ellen Arthur. Washila is a skilled worker and has managed to bounce back. She now works at Pals, manufacturing men's suits. But having been retrenched still hurts.
When a company liquidate like Ellen Arthur, we were paid out nothing. Up until today, we are still waiting on our monies. But at the moment, there seems to be a lot of work at Pals. We are actually working overtime. And things are looking very good at the moment because we have a lot of orders.
But you still live in fear?
Yes, there will always be that fear because we are sitting with this huge problem of the imports, and then we will forever sit with the problem that we are losing our jobs.
Washila's boss, Ron Stockdale, says he's had to be innovative to survive the Chinese onslaught. By increasing productivity, he has shortened delivery times to his clients.
It's a far quicker delivery for them, and not only quicker, they can replace what they've sold the previous week.
He's also found a niche in the manufacturing of police uniforms for African states and bowling trousers for the UK market.
It's very difficult when we're working with a 42.5-hour week versus a 60-hour week, say, in China. It doesn't matter how competitive and how good you get at what you're doing. They've got a 50%, nearly 50% longer week to produce garments in against those same fixed overheads. So obviously they can give better prices.
After years of watching helplessly as cheap imports decimated the local industry, Ron says government has now heard their cries.
Government has given us interest, reduced loans. They've also got a productivity incentive scheme whereby they help us with the purchasing of the latest equipment.
His troubles are not over yet. Other Asian countries are starting to produce clothes on the cheap too.
You've got Bangladesh coming through, also very low wage rates. You've got Vietnam and you've got Myanmar. We are a little bit shielded in those markets at the moment because of jackets, men's structured jackets. There's a lot of skills that go into making those jackets. And those skills are not readily available in those countries as yet.
Ladies' casual wear is the cash cow in clothing manufacturing and is among South Africa's top 10 imports from China. At the newly built Grand Cape China Mall, manager Rebecca Nee says Chinese youth are even dropping out of college to come and make money in South Africa.
The people here, you see, when the way they work is not very high speed. Therefore, we still have a chance.
She introduces us to 26-year-old business graduate Cheng Yung Yang, who says he left a corporate job in Shanghai to manage a restaurant in Milnerton, Cape Town. He tells us he makes 3 to 4 times more here than he did as a sales manager back home.
So do you get a lot of locals buying Chinese food?
Yeah.
Local people?
Yeah.
Really? What do they like?
They like dumplings.
They like dumplings.
Dim sum.
Oh, okay. Fantastic.
Next, we meet lingerie importer Wang Mu Ying. The 30-year-old is from Fujian, a province on the southeast coast of China. She says she abandoned her studies a decade ago to come sell cheap underwear in Cape Town. But what about the quality?
But they say it depends how much you pay. You can still pay a little bit more and get very good quality.
How does she feel about South Africans who say that their cheap goods are killing job opportunities in South Africa?
This question sparks a lengthy discussion, with the shop assistant chipping in. And finally, what Rebecca says are their thoughts.
I think they say it's a freedom market. So you have to try to make your product reasonable price and reasonable quality, because it is a business. You see, there is a competition market and you just need to accept it.
According to Rebecca, this centre employs 120 locals, but she says most Chinese shopkeepers prefer to recruit from home.
The people from local, they seem not try to work harder. So after a few years, they're struggling to deal with the local people, so they try to get people from like Zimbabwe or outside these countries. Yeah.
Rebecca was keen to show off the China Mall's most successful store. Unsurprisingly, it was an electronics shop. And of course, the owners were too busy to chat.
He's too busy to talk to us, right?
Yes.
South Africa imports more than 19 billion rand worth of computers, electrical apparatus and printing machinery from China yearly. But some regulations are being flouted, says Rebecca. SARS officials have found some goods to have been illegally imported, but no one was arrested.
They just talk to you and give you advice and give you a chance to do something right.
Rebecca says there's not much she can do with tenants who don't play by the rules.
As a center manager, I have to tell them, this is the building for our Chinese people. We must keep in a good name. You can't to be selfish just to want to make money.
Illegal goods drive down prices of imported products. Government says it's trying to clamp down, but admits that its efforts are inadequate. UCT lecturer Dr. Sheena O'Connell has taken up the cause of garment makers in the Cape. She says the South African consumer also has a role to play.
It's always bittersweet for me when I drive through places like Atlantis or Khayelitsha and I see the proliferation of Chinese stores or Chinese goods on the side of the road, and it's these very women who have either been retrenched from the factories or are struggling to make ends meet while working there, who are buying there, because I think in one way they fail to see that they are contributing to the downfall of this industry.
She says while the poor often have to buy cheap, those who can afford it should be making better choices, like they do with food.
And it's by scrutinizing those labels, it's by recognizing that a woman in Manenberg or Mitchell's Plain or Khayelitsha has gotten up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go and stitch that vest or that bra.
Like Kwashila from Mitchell's Plain, who says her quality outfits are a cut above Chinese imports.
We are multi-skill operators. We are not just a factory worker sitting in a factory. And we're very proud of the fact that people out there is wearing our things. It is been hanging in the shops and all of that. You know, we're not going out there to steal. We are earning an honest living.
After the break.
The Chinese way is, I take a glass, I want to toast with you, it's kambe. So we toast and then we finish a glass.
Finish? Drink it all?
Yes, that's the Chinese way.
South African winemakers hit the jackpot in China.
Kambe. Cheers.
Despite pledges and promises, most of our exports to China remain raw materials. That, of course, spells bad news for our industries. But our winemakers have recently been reporting record exports to a country known for consuming rice wine. In the famous vineyards of Stellenbosch, harvest time is still months away. But at the Leopard's Leap Wine Estate, a partnership with organic food producer Perfect China has ensured good yields all year round.
It's a first investment of Chinese business into the South African wine business.
The Chinese own 51% of Leopard's Leap, and South African wine is becoming famous in China. Exports of the joint venture signature label Le Huguenot exceed 1 million bottles a year.
We started with Shiraz, because Shiraz is spicy. We also have the second one is a Shiraz Pinotage blend. going very well with the food in China. So if you taste this one, you can smell it, a lot of fruit flavors.
It is very fruity.
And when you taste the wine, it's soft and elegant. And that's what the Chinese like.
The popularity of grape wine in rice wine country has witnessed salivating over potential profits. China is now the leading market for red wine worldwide after beating the French in 2013.
Younger people are start drinking wine in China, and that for me is really interesting. And especially the Chinese women. It's now okay for them to drink wine.
At 1,200 Rand a bottle, the Shiraz is the most popular.
Chinese do have a custom of gift giving, and especially with business deals. They like to give expensive gifts.
But he says our membership of the BRICS group of nations hasn't dented the cost of doing business.
Trade agreements, I think, is really important for us to be successful. And trade agreements similar to New Zealand and Chile doing with China at the moment, where they pay much less tax than us. And it's very difficult for us to compete with them because of the trade agreements.
Free trade agreements can be dangerous, says government.
Remember, trade agreements are reciprocal. If another country drops their tariffs, you must also drop your own tariffs. Now, I think it will be very dangerous for us to drop our tariffs against China, because as you know, they are a major economy, they are a major exporter, and they will decimate our market. So we can't do that.
A few players are making inroads. SAB Miller is now the largest brewer in China by volume, thanks to a joint venture with China Resource Enterprise. But our 200 billion Rand trade remains skewed in China's favor, and despite the pomp surrounding Chinese deals, its investments over the past decade have produced less than 50,000 jobs.
We must ourselves take control of the domestic market, but also we must export into those markets. We must compete with the Chinese companies, and we can.
If we had allowed the Dalai Lama to come to South Africa, would they impose a trade ban on us?
I'm not au fait with let's say, with those matters, which is matters handled by Department of Relations, but I deal with the trade aspects.
It seems that no one doing business with China wants to discuss Dalai Lama politics.
I'm a wine farmer, so I cannot comment on the politics.
Do you worry that it will affect your business or not? Is it not a big thing for you?
It's not a big thing for me.
China famously boycotted Norwegian salmon after dissident Lucia Bo was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize in Norway. Salmon exports reportedly dropped from 92% in 2010 to 29% 3 years later. China expert Dr. Garth Lepierre says while investments from the West are slowing, the East is showing more promise.
The Chinese are looking at major mining concessions in South Africa and in the region. At a time where there's a retrenchment of commitments on development aid, trade and investment from the European Union and the United States. And this is the difference. The Chinese make things happen.
That's all from us this week. Please do give us your feedback. Our Twitter handle is @checkpoint_eNCA. Thanks for watching. I'm Ingipile Mabuse.